All right, in this session, we're going to talk about the smoke. As you recall, in the last two sessions, we have identified what the storm is and how to operate in faith and trust your processes. And in the session right before this, the snake, when you feel there's a betrayal or an enemy trying to sabotage, how to elevate and take it and operate in gratitude and praise. And here we talk about the smoke, where I want to call this the self-inflicted adversities in business and leadership. Recognizing this is the most challenging. I want to lay out 3 scriptures to set the foundation for what the smoke is, and then we'll head into this. First one, Proverbs 26:27. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. You see, this definitely sets the foundation, illustrating how our decisions can become our own downfall. In Revelations 9:2, he opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. See, can you imagine this great furnace way below us? And as we know what fire does, smoke rises, and as the smoke rises, it can get in clear sight of the sun and air, and that's what this is illustrating. The sun and the air were darkened and the smoke from the shaft. So I imagine like driving down the road, and it could be dark or light, but you could still have clear vision because of your headlights or whatever the case may be. But when there's fog, you can't see anything. And I kind of align fog and smoke together, being in the path of the sun, like I just there in my eyes and I can't see, is the same thing that happens with smoke. You see, when these self-inflicted decisions happen, you can actually blind or fog your path and decision making on where God has aligned your purpose to go. The last scripture, and the most important, Matthew 6:23, if the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Man, this is powerful. This is saying you think and believe you're going in the right direction, but because of the fog and cloudiness, you're actually not, and you don't even know it. So how deep is that darkness? When you're going down the wrong path and you know it, at least you have a chance for correction to get on the right path. But if you're going down the wrong path and you believe it's the right path, like imagine going down this road that's just going to go right off a cliff, and you're going at 90 miles per hour thinking you're getting to a destination quicker, but what you're actually doing is setting yourself up for failure because you're going to go off the cliff with no time to stop. So it's very important that this smoke gets addressed. You see, in World War II, Germany started this military strategic element called the smoke screen. They would literally just throw grenade smoke bombs that would rise up and hide the military infantry or the tanks that were coming for ground battle. And what happens when they were doing that, they didn't even realize this, they became super vulnerable. And the same thing happens to us as leaders in business, is when you're operating in the smoke, you become super vulnerable to the enemy, super vulnerable to the world, and super vulnerable to falling off that cliff. You see, the smoke was raising in the air and letting the enemy know you were coming. We were on your way. And they knew to strategically move their forces to ambush you from a different angle and protect themselves, and also attack you, and you didn't even know. It was just the worst setup situation there was. It may have worked once or twice, but the enemy picked up quick, and all of a sudden the smoke screen was against you. And so if the light in you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? I think about that infantry being behind that smoke, thinking they're coming to attack and everything's all good, but really they were just setting themselves up for death. And so there are 3 keys that I want to point out of understanding and identifying the smoke and really keying in what these are. So first of all, where there's smoke, there's fire. You see, smoke signals are a deeper issue, like a foggy windshield, like I mentioned. If you leave them unaddressed, these things can reduce or produce burnout, team dysfunction, missed opportunities, or even at the worst, moral failure. You see, I've been in 2 house fires. One I was in physically, which I share more about that in chapter 10. But the second house fire, we were away on a family vacation for the first time. I was in 8th grade. It was my mom and dad's home, mother and father. And while we're away, 2 neighborhood kids burnt our house down. Yes, sad, devastating, but nobody was hurt, thankfully. When we came back to observe the home, the fire department, the fire chiefs were able to walk us through. And what I learned and what I've got to witness and experience was their course of action while going through and investigating a fire. You see, this fire, our second house fire, it was complete smoke damage. It was an explosion of a lawnmower gas tank from the front porch that blew at a 45-degree angle through the whole house, 2nd floor, all the way to the roof to where you could see the sky. And then the fire team got there, was able to put it out, but the smoke damage was crazy. Everything was black or melted, and it was black. You couldn't see anything. And as they were walking through, they were able to identify the flash points. You see, a flash point is when you take a match, let's just use a match as an example, and it has a substance on the top of the stick that is chemically ready to start a fire, but it needs to hit a substrate. And as soon as the match hits the substrate and rubs, you can literally light that match. And so that's called a flash point. That moment the substrate and that match hit and they rub against each other, that spark is what we call a flash point. And there are flash points in our lives or while we're operating in business that we can do the same thing the chiefs did, the chief of the fire department, when they're looking through, identifying the flash points. Now they're doing it from the back end, meaning the fire is already done, smoke damage is there, and they have to go back. That's important as well, to go back and reassess, look out, find the flash points and find out how the fire started and been able to prevent those in the future. But what I want to do is try to identify the flash points in our life that we could put out before it burns your whole house down, which is very important. There are 3 flash points I want to identify. And I try to get them to start with the same letter. So here we go. We have number 1, ego. Our egos can be driven in a direction and a path that's totally misaligned with God's purpose. You see, that happens especially with successful companies that are building a lot of accolades, getting a lot of profit margins. Sometimes you start making decisions to buy materialistic things, look a certain way, and just start pathing to a different direction that's not even aligned with God anymore. And you could start self-sabotaging and destroying your business. You don't even realize it. Ego is pride. Sometimes the ego jumps in when you start getting advice from employees who are the user side of your product or your services, and you are at an ego point of, no, I created the processes, I'm not listening, and all of a sudden made a decision to stay on course where God was really trying to prompt you to get back on course. Ego can really misalign you in a lot of different ways. You see, ego-driven decisions is really just protecting pride over your purpose. The next one I want to share with you is effort misalignment. I fall on this all the time. You see, that's pouring our energy into the wrong priorities. Like, there are times where God has got us laser focused to have a mission and a purpose, and we can get real excited about another venture or something that comes along, or get distracted and want to chase another idea that we have, and we believe in ourselves as entrepreneurs, but not going through the processes set to know if you have the resources, the energy, and the time to do it. As an ADD guy, I get all the time distracted by little things that I could jump into and try to get rolling at the same time. You're watching social medias and you think you got to, grow all these different lanes and do these certain things, but sometimes they're misaligned. Sometimes you're wasting effort and energy in areas that you shouldn't be. And it's really hard to get out of that smoke because you feel like you're doing everything you can to build the business. And sometimes those different lanes are part of the purpose and aligned with what God wants to do. And trust me, He'll provide the energy, time, and resources to do it. And those are some of the key elements to find and realize, are you in that smoke? The last one I want to share is the most important. It's as a believer and a Christian, it's easy for me to discern, when pride gets in the way. Effort misalignment, that one's a little more on process related, but this one is the key. This is the darkest of the darkest and hard to recognize when you're in it, is emotional residue. So we have talked about ego, effort misalignment, and this last one, emotional residue. You see, emotional residue, I can imagine is like when cooking's done. My wife's an amazing, I call her a chef because she just can put together meals. She's like the ratatouille of somebody who's never taken chef classes but can smell and look and eat something and know all the pieces that put together and cook something. And then my job's supposed to be, as a spouse and a husband, I would come in and help out with the dishes and anything I can. So I try to scrub the pans, get them all clean, put them on the dish rack and let them dry. And then I get I get her to come bring the pan to me and tell me, hey, there's still oil on this. And I can't see it, but I can feel it when I touch it. You see, the oil residue sometimes sticks around and we don't even know it's there. And that's how I see emotional residue. Sometimes emotional residue is when, like if I were to break it down, it's unresolved hurt, bitterness, unforgiveness, and these emotional residues that stick around can really cloud. You see, when Adam and Eve were in the garden, I really had to go in and study and understand what really happened and what is the structure of God's creation and how does all this connect with, even with salvation. This is a big key item here. You see, Adam and Eve was deceived and invited Adam into the deception, and they both ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. You see, when God came and visited Adam, he didn't say like this, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, yo, Adam, like, where you at? And then, Adam reveals himself, and what happens is Adam ends up blaming Eve for eating the fruit. And you see, right there, that word blame really spoke to me, because that, I believe, like, God gave an opportunity for honesty. God didn't set the curse yet. He gave an opportunity for honesty. I'm not sure what would happen if Adam was honest, but I can say this. He was in a position to blame. You see, what happened when God came? Shame was first. They hit themselves, and then blame. When shame turns to blame, that's when we start accusing. And accusations is an arrow that can create bitterness and unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is probably the worst smoke element of all, because when you're walking in unforgiveness and you don't know, you're operating in a detachment from your full purpose. You see, God came to save and redeem, and how he's doing that is applying Jesus as forgiveness to us overall. You're saying, how does this even apply to my business? It applies to your business to every degree, because if you're operating out of unforgiveness or emotional residue and you don't know it's there, if the light in you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? You are going to a cliff that's going off the edge. I'm telling you, there you have to come to a place of looking in the mirror and recognizing that where these emotional residues are. You see, if God came to save, redeem, and forgive, we cannot operate in unforgiveness. See, unforgiveness is the one contract. See, I'm a contractor and I understand contracts. When you sign a contract with somebody, you bind to them until the end. And I still have contracts that we fulfilled all the way to maybe a little punch list item, and that residue of that contract just sits. I can't sleep at night. They're always on my mind. There's always that contract unless I'm able to terminate it or complete it and fulfill it. And see, the enemy's way to fulfill his contracts with us is take unforgiveness to our graves. You see, unforgiveness is powerful, so powerful it could separate you from God forever, because if he came to forgive and you cannot go and forgive, then you are still in contract with the enemy. You see, we have to cut those contracts. smokes. And this is how we're going to do it. To clear the smoke, the first thing that has to happen is honesty. You see, you have to be able to face the smoke. You have to recognize it, but you have to face it. So honesty is number one. Number one is, can I be honest with myself that my ego and my pride is getting in the way? Can I be honest with myself that I'm jumping my energy and resources in places that are not aligned with my purpose and vision that God has given me? Can I be honest that I'm holding emotional residue from my past, emotional residue with my business partner, emotional residue with past experiences I had in my life that I carried into my business, emotional residue that I have with employees or vendors or subcontractors. You see, honesty is key. Being able to just look in the mirror and say, yes, I have an issue. Bringing light, real light to the darkness, extinguishes the darkness and puts out the fire. And now it's time to clear the smoke. To clear the smoke, you have to have humility. First is honesty, but then you have to have humility. You see, humility admits the fault and also additionally seeks help. You see, you have to be able to get on your knees and say, and humble yourself. Humble cuts pride right down. Boom. Humility just cuts it on down. Humility puts you at the feet of emotional residue. You see, there's a story of Jesus and a Pharisee where the Pharisee invited Jesus in to have dinner. And in the cultural respects, when they'd have dinner, they'd kick their feet up on the table and lay back. While they're having dinner, having fun, probably smiles and having conversation, a prostitute lady from down the road comes in, and Jesus turns, puts his feet down. She anoints his feet, wipes it with the oils, cries, tears fall on, and just anointing Jesus. While this was happening, the Pharisee who invited Jesus in starts mumbling to his side and whispering like, man, I'm paraphrasing now, man, that's so-and-so from down the street. We all know who that is. Like, why is Jesus, letting her wash the feet? And Jesus turns to them, and he breaks out a parable that's just profound to me, talking about a very heavy financial debt compared to a very small debt. If both were forgiven, who would be forgiven more? It sounds like an obvious answer, and a Pharisee answer like that. I mean, obviously the one with more debt would be forgiven. You see, what I believe Jesus was illustrating was the key to understand how forgiveness works, how to terminate the contract with the enemy and unforgiveness. You see, in reality, this prostitute, and then you have the Pharisee. The Pharisee saw himself as the small debt guy. He's a Pharisee. And he probably seen her as the big debt because she's a prostitute. But see, that's not the case. The case is we all have the same heavy weight of debt. Same. The difference is how we see it. You see, her response was based on how she recognized her debt. His response was how he recognized his debt. But the truth is, both the debts were equally the same and heavy. So forgiveness and how to operate in forgiveness in honesty and humility and emotional residue is to be like the prostitute at the feet of Jesus, cutting it down, getting down. And when you position yourself and understand your weight, there's no way you can hold unforgiveness above somebody or somebody above you. And that is the key. That posture, that heart to get at the feet of Jesus is the way to cut unforgiveness in half. Just cut it on down and rebuild it. Now, that's where the third key item is healing. First, you have honesty, facing the mirror. Number 2 is humility. And number 3 is healing. This is where repair systems happen. Your culture can be repaired. You regain trust, and where the smoke clears and you can start seeing which direction you're supposed to be on and start rebuilding, and healing can happen. But you have to get rid of the ego, be honest, cut it with humility. You got to get rid of the emotional residue. Be honest, cut it with humility. You got to get rid of misaligned efforts that you're putting out. Be honest with yourself that you're going beyond your resources. Be honest, and then start cutting it with humility that that's just out of your reach for now. That time will come. And now it's time for healing and rebuilding and clearing the smoke. This is very deep, important place for us, because you got to operate in forgiveness from your emotional residue and make sure you're fully aligned and operate as a steward and not an owner. To close this up, you can't fix what you don't face. So I encourage you to face it with honesty, humility, and allow the healing to take place to start rebuilding.